Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we are going to be talking about the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers and their snake-based brand. They're the high A affiliate of the Milwaukee Brewers. They play just outside of Appleton, Wisconsin. Later on in this episode, we'll be speaking with Howard April, who is a naturalist in Wisconsin. And, of course, Dan Simon will be here with one of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I am so pleased to welcome to the Baseball by Design podcast Rob Zurjav, who is the president and CEO of the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers. Rob, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. I am doing great. Thank you for having me. We have some white snow on the ground today here in Wisconsin, and we open up shortly, but I think it'll all be gone by opening day.
Well, at the time of this recording, opening day is just around the corner. This may drop after opening day, but yeah, we are nearing the end of the off season for you all. So, congratulations. I know that the off season people always say like, oh, well, the team only plays during this time, and so there's, you have sort of a downtime during. There is no downtime in minor league baseball, is there?
There isn't. We actually own our own stadium. We have a banquet facility here at the stadium. So we have events going on basically year round. I think 290 days out of the 365, we have something going on at the ballpark. So yeah, it's just a different season for us.
This team has been around for a while, since 1995, I believe. Is that right?
So are actually in Appleton for over 100 years. We've been the Appleton Papermakers, the Fox Cities Foxes, the Appleton Foxes. But yes, the Timber Rattlers came to being in 1995. So this will be our 30th season.
I do remember that Appleton Foxes logo, the old AF. That was a sort of classic minor league baseball establishment. You switched to the Timber Rattlers name in 1995, like we just said, and there was a sort of fun type-based logo with the letter S standing in for a snake with a little rattle on the end of it wrapped around a baseball. That was kind of fun. And then you were involved with the rebrand with then Plan B branding. Was Brandiose Plan B back then, or were they Brandiose?
Well, we worked a little bit with Studio Simon on the rebrand, and then that was more of our script logo, yes. So, and then we worked with Brandiose extensively on everything else we've done with the rebrand of the W logo and adding all the alternate logos. So we've been with Brandiose for quite some time now.
And I know that they've been involved also in some of the alternate logos that we'll talk about, but I'm getting way ahead of myself already. Why is a team in Wisconsin, in Appleton, Wisconsin, called the Timber Rattlers?
That is the $1,000,000 question. And I don't even know if I can give a really good explanation because, yeah, there are not snakes all over the place here in Wisconsin. Really, it came down to we were the Appleton Foxes. We were putting a new stadium in. We wanted to rebrand the team. And this predates me as well by a couple of years. But in 1994, before we became the Timber Rattlers in 95, there was a local artist. He put together 4 different options. I think it was the Fox Cities Current because there's a river that runs through the city. And there were the Phantoms, which kind of was an umpire-looking logo, which was kind of a cool logo, but I don't think anybody wants to be an umpire baseball team. And then there was, for whatever reason, the Timber Rattlers, and the logo was just, it popped. And what they did is they went to local grade schools and said, which logo do you like? And of course, kids are going to say, that scary looking snake is what we really like. And really, it was the public that decided, and we became the Timber Rattlers. And it was, again, past that, I just know it was a popular logo with kids, and that's why we became the Timber Rattlers.
Now, you've been with the team for a couple of decades. You were involved in the rebrand in 2011, which featured certainly a more pronounced snake, really featured the snake character looking menacingly at the viewer there. It's not a cutesy snake. I mean, it's got sort of some whimsy to him, I think, but certainly, a snake who has a little bit of menace to him and much more, literally snake looking than the previous logo. You were there with the team when that happened. What was the thinking in that?
Yeah, it was really relying on the expertise of Brandiose and their thoughts, but just making it cleaner, crisper, more updated, and really think it turned out well. And again, when all these teams are rebranding themselves, and we took the path of the Timber Rattlers logo has been so popular around the country. We had a lot of little league teams throughout the country as the Timber Rattlers brand, and our color scheme really worked really well in all the little league programs. So we didn't want to get rid of the Timber Rattlers name. So we just wanted to update the brand, really make it crisp and clean, and then rely on Brandios for alternate identities instead of just a complete rebrand of the team.
The marks that you've had now since 2011, you talk about freshening them up at that time, to that they'd been around for a while. Is there talk of, seeing as minor league baseball, the logo landscape has changed quite a bit in the last 14 years. Is there talk of updating these looks at all? Is it, especially with all the prolific amount of work that Brandios is doing for you all, is there talk of another refresh at any time?
Actually, no. Right now, I think we're very happy with the current state of the logos. It's funny with anytime you change anything, there's all these politics to it. Our W logo we've had for since 1995. When we look to update this, the Washington Nationals all of a sudden had an issue with our W, and it's completely different. And it's just funny the politics that go into it, and all the hoops you have to jump into or jump through. So we're pretty content with the way it looks right now, and I think also with new era and the way hats are made, and it takes multiple years. We definitely have to get ahead of the curve if we want to change a logo. But I think we're pretty content with the way the W turned out, and we added the R logo with the snake wrapped around it as well, the Rattlers logo, and yeah, feel really good with the position we're in currently.
So there are people who love snakes. There are people who are, have a really sincere phobia of them, don't want to see even a picture of them. Do you ever encounter fans who say, "Man, I'd love to go to a baseball game, but I just can't with the snake"?
That is one we have not heard yet. But I do get it. A snake phobia. Ironically, we have a Northwoods League team as well, and they're the dock spiders. So we're snakes and spiders. So I don't know if we uh, trend towards things that people are scared of, but yeah, haven't had that. And our mascot Fang, he has arms and legs, and kids love him. So it's actually been pretty good, and haven't had anybody not come to games because of a fear of snakes.
I am a Richmond Spider, so the Dock Spiders are a team that I look at and say, "Man, there are very few spider-based teams out there, and the Dock Spiders and my Richmond Spiders are honestly the only two that I can think of." Do you know of any other spider teams?
I want to say we did a lot of research. Loved the Richmond Spiders logo. Wanted to obviously be different from that. Off the top of my head, I can't think of who it is, but I thought there was one or two others. It might have been more based in arena football or something like that.
Hmm. Probably. I know that Richmond is the only spiders in universities and colleges, but I got a little out of my shoes there by saying it was all of sports. So maybe I'll dial that back a little bit. You mentioned since we're talking about the Dock Spiders, and I did want to talk about some of these alternate identities that you have. A very unique situation that you all pulled off a couple of years ago, where you had both the Timber Rattlers and the Fond du Lac Dock Spiders share an alternate identity, the Lake Winnebago Shantymen. But where did the idea of having both of your teams share one alternate identity come from?
Well, what's funny is, so yes, ice fishing is a big deal up here in Wisconsin. There is a large lake in Wisconsin, and Appleton is actually at the north tip, and Fond du Lac is actually at the south tip. And it is, I want to say, the largest lake that allows sturgeon spearing.
Hmm.
So sturgeon spearing is a big deal here in February. Sturgeon, it's a giant, they kind of say it's like a dinosaur fish, but for a period of a couple of weeks, you're allowed to cut a hole in the ice, put your shanty on top, and you actually use a spear and you spear the sturgeon. It sounds a little barbaric, but it's a big cultural thing here in Wisconsin, and a lot of it takes place right on Lake Winnebago in Appleton, and also down in Fond du Lac. So we just thought the perfect tie with us being in Appleton, our team in Fond du Lac. When Brandios was looking at names for the Fond du Lac Dock Spiders, Shantyman was one of those ideas. So it just kind of came together and really took off, really went over really, really well. Yeah, kind of a neat crossover that we were able to kind of show how we have both of the teams. And it really, yeah, really worked out really, really well for both from a merchandise standpoint.
I'm going to ask you maybe the very most obvious question that I could ask about any of your alternate identities, but the Timber Rattlers entry into the minor league baseball food frenzy is the Wisconsin Brats. I was going to ask you how come the Wisconsin Brats, but that's the most obvious question there. Is there anything we're missing with that brand or anything special about that brand that you want to comment on?
Yeah, again, when we saw all of these other teams getting into alternate identities, and we kind of dipped our toe in the water with the Broads, not controversial name at all. The uniforms, however, were very controversial. Actually, turned out to be fantastic, and it's actually one of my favorite jerseys and uniforms that we have, where the players are actually wearing lederhosen themed uniforms, where it's not just the tops, but it's also the pants. So they wear knee-high pants, and they're brown, and the lederhosen on the jersey tie in with the pants, and it just looks like we've got these German dudes playing baseball. So that turned out really, really well from a uniform standpoint. And the Brats was kind of us dipping our toe into the water, and then we started to get a little bit more crazy, and have really found a lot of success with a lot of the brands that we've introduced.
What do the players think about lederhosen based baseball uniforms? Does it affect them at all? Do they care what they're wearing out there, or is it just they want to just go play the game?
Yeah, no, I think they like change.
Hmm.
And again, we get guys in college, they've worn some crazy uniforms in college. So I think they like to be a little bit different. The later Hosen uniforms, took a little bit of getting used to and some convincing, but now we've done it. I think it's going on 6 years with the Brats, that the players just are well aware. The guys that were here last year, they know all about it. So they tell the guys that are coming in, this is what we do. We've also introduced some other color schemes with some of our other theme nights, and we're wearing blue pants that almost look like jeans. So yeah, we've really taken to not just the uniform top, but really putting the whole uniform together, where the pants, the jersey, they all kind of go together, the hat, and it really forms this, yeah, uniform that really speaks to the theme.
So here's one where I need to tell you, Rob, that one of your alternate identities almost got me killed at a Colorado Rockies game. We were we were sitting in the upper deck, the upper section of the upper deck, and there's stairs that go right in front of us. And whenever I see someone wearing a minor league baseball cap, I always have to engage, right? Like I always have to, hey, look, you're wearing a cool hat. I like that hat. And I'm sitting in the front row of the upper section of the upper deck, and this person, actually this couple, they're going down the stairs in front of me. It is I'll say, curvaceous woman in a tank top, and a dude also in a tank top, I think, wearing an Udder Tuggers hat. And the Udder Tuggers brand is based on a cow. It's based on the dairy industry there in Wisconsin. And without thinking about what I was doing, I yelled to the dude, "Hey, Udder Tuggers!" And his girlfriend, literally girlfriend, wife, I don't know, wheeled around on me and said, "What?" And the three people I was with at the game all looked at me and said, "What?" And then the guy takes off his hat and he's like, "Yeah, Udder Tuggers." And then all of the people who were looking at me and ready to attack were like, "Oh, okay." So that's how I nearly died because of the Udder Tuggers. That is a name, obviously, as that story implies, it creates a little bit of discomfort, even though it's just about the dairy industry. That's a fun one. I know that you worked with Brandios on that one. Udder Tuckers, how's the reaction been to that? What do people think of the Udder Tuckers?
Yeah, Undertugger is a little risque. And again, this goes back to we dipped our toe in the water with Broads, and then we saw a lot of minor league teams really getting kind of going out there and seeing a ton of success with merchandise. So we said to Brandios, okay, let's look at this option. And honestly, when Brandios came out to again, they really helped us create the brand of the Fond du Lac Dock Spiders. So they brought up and they kind of said Udder Tuggers to us. We're like, there's no way we're naming this team Udder Tuggers. So it just kind of went on the shelf. And we had a dairy night celebrating. June is dairy month in Wisconsin. So it was always we'd have a dairy night at the ballpark. And we thought all these other teams are having all the success, kind of being risque. Udder Tuggers is on the shelf. And actually our vice president of marketing, she mentioned, what if we looked at Udder Tuggers as a rebrand? And we said, let's talk to Brandios. And I think they already had a logo designed already for this because we said, hey, can you put a logo together? And usually for us in Brandios, I think this frustrates Jason and everybody at Brandios. We go back and forth a lot.
Hmm.
So it's, can you tweak this? Can you tweak that? Can you tweak this? They sent us the Udder Tuggers logo, and it was like, that's it. It's beautiful. It's perfect. So we did a little research internally, and everybody's like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's try this. We released it in June of 2000 and I believe 18 because I think we debate or no 2019, and we were a little worried what the reaction was going to be, and it was tremendous. And I'll take a step back. Undertuggers is basically what farmers were called. Again, it was kind of a slang term for farmers, dairy farmers back in the 30s and 40s, and they tugged the udders, and that was just kind of what they called them. So we were a little worried about what was going to happen, but it just took off like wildfire. We sold out of merchandise within an hour, reordering right away. The rest of the year, it was just constantly reordering Undertugger merchandise and sending it out. Hit all 50 states right away, and the response was amazing. Really, no backlash. I was shocked. I was shocked by the fact that everybody just embraced it and loved it. And it was men, women. The farming industry thought it was fantastic. The dairy industry thought it was fantastic. It's really just been our signature one-off brand. We went from one night, now it's an entire weekend. So we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is Udder Tuggers weekend, and it's been just tremendous for us. So we've continued to add some additional brands, but Udder Tuggers is kind of that crown jewel that continues to just overwhelm, and just hats, and the way we do the jersey and the uniforms. It's just been quite the wild ride.
Well, you say there's been no pushback. There was a little bit of pushback from that guy's girlfriend for about 2 seconds before she realized what was happening at that Rockies game. All right, one more, Rob. I wanted to ask you about. This is the newest one, just out in February of this year. The Wisconsin frozen pizzas, which is it's a fun claim to fame for Wisconsin. I think of frozen pizzas as sort of like a backup plan, and this is sacrilege for folks in Wisconsin, but I'm told by people in Wisconsin that I'm just doing frozen pizza wrong, and that there are really good frozen pizzas, or at least a lot of variety of frozen pizzas. How old did you decide to be the frozen pizzas for an alternate identity?
Well, yeah, again, I've grown up in Wisconsin, so to me, frozen pizza has just been part of my life forever. And I was actually shocked. I think I was 22, and we went out to Lake Tahoe. And again, we were just young kids, and let's go and get some frozen pizzas because that's what we'll eat because we can't afford to go out for dinner. And we went to the grocery store, and they had like one brand of frozen pizza. I'm like, what is this? How can you have one brand of frozen pizza? And I did not realize that Wisconsin is so synonymous. You go to a grocery store here, it's entire frozen foods aisle section is just frozen pizzas, and it's crazy. So we started doing our research, and yeah, frozen pizzas. That's Wisconsin's sort of the capital of frozen pizzas in the country, if not the world. Manufactured here, eaten here, and we worked with Brandios to design this logo back during COVID, and we sort of softly debuted it with a frozen pizza festival at the stadium. We had, I think, 15, 20 different frozen pizza manufacturers here. People could buy tickets, they could do sampling, beer and pizza, and we had the logo. You could get the t-shirt. So about 300 people probably had this t-shirt back in 2021. And it's just taken this long. Really, again, it kind of goes to New Era and Major League Baseball and the vetting process. So it just takes a long time now to unveil a new alternate logo. But love the pizza oven. And what was funny too is when you were talking to Brandios, they didn't even know what a pizza oven was, which again to me is just sacrilegious because they're everywhere. Every dive bar has a pizza oven in it, and that's what they serve. You go into the bar if you want something to eat, you get a frozen pizza out of their pizza oven. So the logo turned out great, and again, just locally, we have a great partnership with Kraft, which does DiGiorno Pizza and Jack's Pizza. They absolutely love the idea, and it's really been, again, a hit one out of the park. We've been selling merchandise like hotcakes since February, reordering, working with New Era, and getting as much back in stock as we possibly can.
So I have sort of an overarching question about all of these brands, and it's one that I sort of mull with minor league baseball in general, which is where is the line for you as a team, as a brand? Major League Baseball is so much about just brand loyalty, basically, right? Whereas minor league baseball, I feels a lot it feels a lot safer to create a lot of different brands for the same team. Where do you find is there a danger in sort of creating brand confusion, or does that not matter at the minor league baseball level? Just having a lot of different options and fun things that are in the store for fans to collect and accumulate is more important.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line, and I think we're towing that line a little bit. We kind of even joke. Gosh, I think the players wear 12 or 13 different hats
Hmm.
during the course of a season. So we've really done our best to keep the Timber Rattlers brand. That's important to us. We feel that's a strong brand, and that's who we are. So we do these other brands, and we're kind of grandfathered in with minor league baseball because they don't allow as many brands as we actually currently have with the brats and the Undertuggers and the frozen pizzas, and we have our new Graneros, which is our Copa identity, the Shantymen. We've done a Youper night, so we have yet again, a Youper, for those that aren't aware, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan is the UP, so they're called Youpers. They come down, they love the game. We have a lot of Youpers in our area, so we have a different brand for Youper night. So we sort of do toe that line, but we feel our brands are so iconic. That's what we really shoot for. We don't want to just do, okay, we're going to do this brand this year and then it's going to go away next year. Then we're going to do another brand and then it's going to go away. We've really done our homework and really worked hard with Brandios to make sure that these brands can stay. They have staying power, and we're not going to just do them kind of as a one-off. These are going to be something that we're going to introduce, and people are just going to be accustomed. They can wear their Brats hat from 5 years ago to the Brats game or the Brats weekend this year. So it's really about, for us, keeping that core brand in the Timber Rattlers, but at the same time, the brands we introduce, they're going to be iconic as well and not just one-offs.
I have to say I've been a little bit distracted while we've been talking because over your right shoulder on your Zoom screen here is I assume, a live feed of your field, and it's covered in snow at the moment, and there's been a vehicle on it. And I was really hoping for a little while that maybe it was a Zamboni, but I don't think it's a Zamboni. I think it's just a truck. So
Oh yes, that probably will be the next maybe you just struck the next brand for the Timber Rattlers.
well, if I had a hand in that, all I ask is a hat. Rob, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about all these brands. We crammed in a lot over 20 something minutes here, so that's there was a lot to talk about. Where can people find the team? Where can people find you online, social media, etc.?
Yeah, we're on all the social channels. Timberrattlers.com is the best place to start. You can find everything about all of our alternate identities. You can shop the team store, but then, yeah, find us on X, Instagram, Facebook. Basically, everywhere you can find anything, you're going to find the Timber Rattlers.
Rob, thanks so much. Best of luck with the final preparations for the season, and best of luck in 2025.
Sounds good, Paul. Appreciate the time.
All right, take care. All right, everyone, welcome back. What a pleasure for me to welcome back to the Baseball by Design podcast my very good friend, Howard April. Howard is the official Baseball by Design Wisconsin wildlife correspondent. Howard and Ranger Amy have worked out an arrangement where Howard can take the Wisconsin ones. And to that end, if you've been listening for a while, you know that Howard April was on our Beloit Snappers episode back in 2022, and then the Beloit Sky Carp episode in 2024. It's 2025. Howard April, co-star of the movie Major League with Charlie Sheen, is back. Howard, good morning. How are you?
Hello, Paul Caputo, and doing very well. And thank you for making me an official co-star of the
Yeah.
movie Major League. You gave me a promotion there.
Yeah. Some people would say that you were just an extra, a beer vendor in one scene, the ball 4, ball 8, ball 12 scene, as we have discussed. You were more than an extra. You were Charlie Sheen's co-star. You had lunch with him in the green room or whatever. We've told that story on past episodes. If you want to hear Howard's story about co-starring with Charlie Sheen in Major League, go listen to episode 131, June 4, 2024, the Beloit Sky Carp. I think that's when we told that episode. So, Howard, thank you for coming back. Howard is a naturalist at the Ware Nature Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And that's how come Howard is our Wisconsin wildlife correspondent. Howard, we're talking about the Timber Rattlers. Before we get into that, though, baseball season has started. You and I have been to a couple of Milwaukee Brewers games in the past. We've been to a couple of Beloit Snappers games in the past. What's the update on baseball in Wisconsin right now?
I'm just really glad when they got out of New York City.
All right.
Hopefully, that opening series did not portend what was in the future for them.
That one brought all of the attention to the torpedo bats. Everyone's just like, "Oh, the Yankees have hit 50 home runs this weekend. It must be the torpedo bats." Turns out it was just the Brewers pitching. We're not here to talk about torpedo bats and the Brewers, though, Howard. We're here to talk about timber rattlers. Like I said, you work at the Ware Nature Center. You're a park naturalist at the Ware Nature Center, and so you get to work with and live with the natural landscape, the flora and fauna of Wisconsin. How critical a role do snakes play, and in particular, rattlesnakes? I don't associate Wisconsin with rattlesnakes. Are they prominent in Wisconsin?
Rattlesnakes are really interesting. At the time of colonization, rattlesnakes were really very widespread from coast to coast. In Wisconsin, we have 22 species of snakes, and of which only two are venomous. Only two are rattlesnakes. The Massasauga, which is very small and very, very rare, and the timber rattler. And the timber rattler is actually a really cool, really amazing snake with some amazing adaptations. And I know that when people sometimes think of rattlesnakes, they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's a rattlesnake. It's dangerous." Well, you know what? Statistically speaking, you really have a greater in Wisconsin, you have a greater chance of slipping on a slipping on the ice, slipping in the bathtub, or getting bit by a dog, or getting stung by a hornet or wasp than you do of getting bit or injured by
Are those
by a
actual
timber
statistics
rattler.
right there? Is that like the saber of Wisconsin deaths right there? Like slipping in an icy bathtub is a more common death than getting bit by a Wisconsin timber rattler?
Statistically, yes.
Okay.
Well, see, so since they've been keeping records since about 1900, I mean, the numbers are the numbers are the numbers. Um, from my research, I've only discovered that two people have died of rattlesnake bites in the past 125 years. And think of how many people are in Wisconsin. Think of how many people live in Wisconsin. Think of how many people interact in the out of doors in Wisconsin. And just quite frankly, you should be more concerned about hornets and wasps than rattlesnakes. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't give them the respect that they deserve. Certainly, you want to do that, but statistically speaking, dogs and cats are far more dangerous to the average person these days.
So I was in Arizona one time many years ago. This was a trip that I took many years ago, and I was out for a run by myself. And Ranger Amy and I were just friends at that point, but I had reached out to her by text because I was on a run. I was not from Arizona. I continue to not be from Arizona. And there was a huge rattlesnake stretched out across the path. I mean, it was probably 8 to 10 feet long. I mean, I don't know. Ultimately, I did not get close enough to like really measure it. But I texted Ranger Amy and I was just like, there's a huge rattlesnake stretched out across the path in front of me. It was like a wash, basically. And she said, if it's stretched out in front of you, you could basically just like walk right over it and keep going because it's when they're coiled up that you really have to worry. First of all, did Ranger Amy give me good advice there? And second of all, is that true? Like, where do you have to be like sort of most wary of a rattlesnake?
Sure. So in some ways, snakes are kind of are like some people, and that is most rattlesnakes. They kind of some people. You know how some people just want to be left alone.
Hmm.
That's really the way it is with rattlesnakes. As long as you leave them alone, as long as you don't harangue them, harass them, corner them, the chances of getting bit by a rattlesnake are I can never say zero because there's never a 0% chance of getting bit if you're in rattlesnake country. But statistically, the chances are so low. For the most part, rattlesnakes in Wisconsin, we have like I said, we have the Massasauga and the timber. The timber rattlesnake is the more common of the two, but even though it's more common, it's really not that common. They're found in a very limited range in western and southwest Wisconsin, primarily in areas that are the rocky bluffs that are along the Mississippi and the Wisconsin River. They like the rugged area. They like that area because there's lots of areas for them to bask. They need a lot of sun, especially the gravid moms. Gravid is just a scientific term for being pregnant for snakes. So the moms need lots of sun in order to develop those baby snakes and for thermal regulation. And then they like the hide places so that because snakes are pretty shy and they like to hide a lot of the time as well. So the as long as you don't try and pick up a snake, as long as you leave it alone, you're just fine. Now, there have been documented instances where people are climbing on these rocky bluffs along the Wisconsin River and the Mississippi River, and they put their hand in a place before looking where they put their hand.
Mm.
And then snakes might actually get startled and they might bite. But for the most part, temperamentally, timber rattlers are really mellow snakes.
So the reason I asked that question is if if you look at this Wisconsin Timber Rattlers logo, it is coiled up rather than stretched out or, like sometimes like in an S shape or whatever. And I have always perceived that coiled position as the more menacing for a rattlesnake. You're nodding yes on our audio podcast. Tell me more. Why are you nodding?
Sure. So if a snake is coiled, well, remember, if a snake is, well, three things that come to mind. One, a coiled up snake, just aesthetically, it looks kind of cool on a logo. Yeah. So I totally get that. But it also could mean, because it's a way of kind of saying, in conjunction with its rattling, it's a way of saying, hey, back off, leave me alone. And I'm really glad that you asked me that, because timber rattlers, for the most part, they will warn you. Not always, but they will warn you before they strike. And once again, they just want to be left alone. Also, keep in mind the venom. It's really just keep in mind with their venom. They want to save their venom to capture, immobilize, and digest prey. So by them wasting it on some idiot going, hey, let's pick up the snake, they're wasting their venom. So yeah, if it's coiled up, it could be one of two things. It could be just it's kind of trying to stay warm, or it also means like, hey, it's communicating, hey, back off, leave me alone. But also, let me say this: what's really interesting is Wisconsin has other snake species that will mimic rattlesnakes.
Oh.
So we have a species called the fox snake, and it lives. There's some overlap as far as home range, but they live on the floor of Wisconsin deciduous forests. And if it gets agitated or threatened, it will vibrate its tail, and it vibrates its tail so fast in the dried leaves of the forest floor. You know what it sounds like?
Some kind of baby pacifier.
That and a rattlesnake.
A rattle. It sounds like a rattlesnake.
It really does. And I've seen that in the wild. I'm like, holy cow. If I was an animal and I heard that, I'd back off too.
Yeah. You said early on that rattlesnakes have a lot of that timber rattlers in particular have a lot of cool adaptations. What are some of the adaptations that timber rattlers have?
Well, think about it. Think about the concept of venom in and of itself. The ability to capture prey, inject something into it, immobilize it so that you can consume it. I mean, we've heard about venomous snakes our whole life, but that's just absolutely amazing. And what's really amazing is the chemical content. There are scientists in medical science are currently looking at all different types of snake venom, not just rattlesnake venom, but all different types of snake venom for use as potential medications. And in fact, there are actual FDA approved drugs that are out there that have been derived from snake venom. And what's really interesting is I read that less than 1% of all the venomous snakes out there, that less than 1% of the venom has been actually studied for potential medical application.
Now, you know that I love to get pedantic, and one of the terms that people mix up all the time, and this is probably such old hat to you now that it probably doesn't even seem like something that people would mix up, but people mix up venomous and poisonous all the time. You rolled your eyes. What's the difference between venomous and poisonous?
Holy cow. I love that you're pedantic. Don't even get me started.
I did get you started. I asked the question.
So poison is ingested. So you eat a poisonous mushroom, you eat a poisonous plant. If something is venomous, that means it is injected into you. And while that might seem like a small difference, because both can have negative consequences, it is an important distinction. And in fact, a colleague of mine at work, we were just talking about this because she found the word poison, poisonous snakes, on a, let's just say, a reputable government website that we were shocked and surprised about and should know better.
Wow. Okay. So venomous is more sort of proactive. If something is venomous, that means it has the ability to inject its venom into you, whereas something that's poisonous is more likely to be passive and is just going to be sitting there waiting for you to come make some stupid mistake. And it wouldn't have to, I would think, be swallowed like a poisonous toad. If you just touch it, you're ingesting the poison that way. Is that right?
Well, think of the classic example of the monarch butterfly,
Mm.
widespread species across North America. Everyone's familiar with the monarch. One of the reasons the monarch has that bright orange is to advertise, "Don't eat me.
Right.
I'm not going to taste good, and I'm going to make you throw up.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an upset stomach." So that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Monarch butterflies are not venomous. They are poisonous when ingested.
Okay. All right, Howard. I have two more questions for you. The first one, people perceive snakes as being sort of cold and slimy and not very warm, right? Like you don't make like an emotional connection to a snake. Most people don't. Tell me something that's going to make me feel warm and fuzzy about snakes and the timber rattler in particular.
Oh my gosh. Well, Paul, I got to tell you, one of the great things about timber rattlesnakes is that the mama rattlesnakes, the female rattlesnakes, they actually have been documented to demonstrate what could be construed as maternal care for their youngsters. So think about this. Mom will give birth to between anywhere like 5 to 14 youngsters. Research shows the average they give birth to about 9. And yes, they give birth, so the eggs are internal, and
Hmm.
then the youngsters hatch out of mom alive. So a little
Hmm.
bit different. But there's documented research that shows that the youngsters, instead of just emerging and then dispersing on their own, that they'll hang out with mom, and mom will protect them and kind of look over them for a time until they're a little bit bigger. Because even though youngsters are venomous and they're venomous from almost the time they're born, there's lots of things that will eat a baby rattlesnake when they're that tiny and that small. So hanging out with mom until they got a little size on them, mom's helping them out, helping them survive. And that's important because remember, they only reproduce like once every 3 to 4 years. So that's one of the reasons that rattlesnakes in Wisconsin are kind of in a tough spot because they typically don't make a lot of babies year after year.
I like that you said remember as if that were something I knew and had maybe forgotten.
Sorry, it's my Mimi traveling in naturalist circles. But I will say this: I think it's awesome that Wisconsin has a professional baseball team that actually kind of honors and is inspired by local wildlife. I just think that's pretty awesome.
You said that the fox snake was the one that imitated the timber rattler, and I made note of that because this team used to be the Appleton Foxes, and so they could have just become the fox snakes and kept largely the same logo, I would think.
It's interesting you should say that because superficially, I've had people say, "Oh, I have a rattlesnake in my yard," and I ask them where they live, and I'm thinking, you know what? I bet it's a fox snake or a bull snake, and I said, "Send me a picture," and 90% of the time, it's a fox snake.
Yeah.
Because, but yeah, yeah.
You
But you know what? The other thing that might not be the best thing because I got to tell you one thing about fox snakes, they're very common amongst nature centers and education centers because temperament-wise they're kind of like the lap snakes.
lap snakes.
They're, fox snakes are pretty mellow. They're
Yeah.
really mellow. Most nature centers in Wisconsin have one or two because they're great educational snakes. But if you come across one in the wild, harass it, and you're going to find out that one, they imitate rattlesnakes, and two, they can bite.
Oh
So,
no, F around and find
like,
out.
yeah, exactly. So, like
Um,
with all things, enjoy nature, but sometimes it's best to enjoy it from a distance and give it the respect that it deserves.
okay. Howard, thank you so much. This is so much fun. I always love covering Wisconsin nature-based baseball teams so that we can have you on the podcast. We're going to go catch a Timber Rattlers game together, have some ice cream and a helmet, and enjoy some baseball. In the meantime, where can people find the Ware Nature Center online?
Oh, you go to warenaturecenter.com and you can learn all about the awesome programming and opportunities that we have there. Check us out.
Where is WEHR? Howard, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and hey, we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Always a pleasure, Paul.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for Studio Simon Stumpers with my good friend Dan Simon of Studio Simon in Louisville, Kentucky. We're talking about the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers. Dan, first of all, good morning. Hello, how are you?
I am fantastic, but your little lead in there immediately leads to a question that I would like to ask you.
Okay.
You pronounced it rattlers.
Hmm.
I pronounce it, I'm not saying I pronounce it correctly, rattlers.
Oh,
So
Rattlers.
is there a correct way to pronounce it, or are both acceptable? Do you have any idea?
You know, I'm all for weird regionalisms. I do like different pronunciations of different things. I will say that Rattlers is not one that I had heard, though when you said it, it didn't sound weird to me. I don't know. Well, we got to do some research on this one, Dan.
Okay. Okay,
Um,
but let's move on to our stumper, shall we?
Well, before we move on to the stumper, I did want to just ask you the question. This is an interesting brand because you can't really point to any one specific designer who is responsible for all the work of the primary Wisconsin Timber Rattlers brand, but you were involved partially in the creation of this brand. So, what was your role in the existing Timber Rattlers brand?
My role, and this was a number of years ago now, at least 10. I'd have to look it up, but off the top of my head, I'm going to go with at least 10.
Okay.
And they came to me for a brand update. In the first round presentation, I had kept, they've got a cap logo, which is a W with a timber rattler wrapped around one of the vertical legs. Well, I guess they're all vertical and angled legs of the W. And I completely redid that snake. And upon seeing that, they didn't want to go that direction. They wanted to just do a brand refresh. So that logo was actually kept, I believe. And I did a new primary logo that used the head of one of the iterations of the original snake. And then I drew a coiled body in it and did new typography for both Wisconsin and Timber Rattlers for Jersey usage, but also Rattlers for the primary logo. So that still exists in the brand identity system. And I also did a new TR logo for them. And they have since done an update of that W with the Timber Rattler wrapped around it cap logo, and maybe added another couple of things. So you've had three different designers have their hands in the Timber Rattlers or Rattlers identity. An interesting thing that there were three designers having their hands in the identity when the subject of their identity has no hands.
It's a really important point, Dan. I'm sorry that I did not think of that. I'm always curious, and then we'll get to the stumper after this, but I'm curious just about when you're designing a logo or updating a logo based on an animal that a lot of people have a really serious aversion to, like snakes, or sometimes, I think of my Richmond spiders. Do you do something to soften the image of that animal, or do you just think that if someone has an aversion to snakes, a phobia, they're just not going to like that logo because they're scared of it?
Oh no, I don't know, you definitely have to make the artwork more appealing than if you were ornithologically correct. Is that the
Mm,
right word?
sure. I'm going to go with it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll Google it over here while you're talking.
That might only have to do with
I think
birds.
that's birds, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Herpetologically?
Uh, we'll talk about that.
Oh, okay.
We're going to be
Oh,
talking about
oh,
that.
okay. All right.
But it's kind of like when I was doing the brand refresh for the Greensboro grasshoppers. An actual grasshopper, if you look at it closely, is a pretty horrifying looking. Like if it was life size
Yeah.
and you were came face to face with it,
No.
I'd be scared witless, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So snakes, I have to say, not a big fan of them. And you do want to make it more visually appealing. That said, there are a number of snakes in the world of sports branding. There's a collegiate team. There's somebody in Florida, that has a snake, one of the Florida universities, and they look menacing.
Mm.
But in the case of minor league baseball, you don't want them to be as menacing as they might necessarily be in for a collegiate athletic program because you have a different audience in minor league baseball, one that includes children and women and families. So you want it to be a little more family friendly. That said, the Wisconsin Timber Rattler snake still is it's semi-menacing, but softened to a degree. But that was done in the original identity. And so any softening, I didn't add softening.
You did not add softening.
Right.
Sounds like we're talking about laundry now.
So
I have to say, I like the Serpientes, the Diamondbacks City Connect Serpientes uniform. One of these days, by the way, we're gonna have to talk about my day in the press box at Coors Field, getting to cover the new City Connect Rockies uniforms. That's a whole other story. Let's get back, Dan, to the subject at hand, the matter at hand. Your studio Simon Stumper on the subject of the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers. What do you have for us today?
okay, well, you alluded to our studio Simon Stumper today when you mentioned the word herpetology. Our studio Simon Stumper today asks, what is the subfield of herpetology that is specifically the study of snakes?
Ooh, this is some great baseball trivia right here.
Okay, is it A, ichthyology,
That's fish.
B, ophiology, or C, batrachology?
Ugh. All right. It's not ichthyology. That's fish.
Right.
So it's one of these other two. Ophiology?
Ophiology and batrachology.
Batrachology.
Other two guess. So you got a 50-50 shot here.
I do have a 50-50 shot.
Okay, would you like to phone a friend?
Dan, I think because Ranger Amy would normally have been my wildlife correspondent on this episode, and we had a co-star of Major League Howard April on instead, I think Ranger Amy would like to make an appearance on this episode. So let's call Ranger Amy in. So yes, I would like to phone a friend, and I would like that friend to be Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent, Ranger Amy. This is unprecedented in Studio Simon Stumpers.
Okay, yeah, this is a new and fun thing.
All
So,
right, let me go get Ranger Amy. All right, Dan.
hey,
As you can see, we have Ranger Amy on the line.
Oh my gosh, this is a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Hope I get
good
it.
morning, Ranger Amy.
Good morning.
As I was asking this question to Paul, it occurred to me, let's offer him the chance to bring in an expert. And there's nobody more expert than Ranger Amy.
Oh my gosh.
So our studio Simon Stumper today asked, and now it will ask again, what is the subfield of herpetology that is specifically the study of snakes? Is it A, ichthyology? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
That's fish.
That's
Okay.
that's what I said. I said that's fish.
B, ophiology, or C, batrachology?
It's ophiology.
Final answer?
Final answer.
You are correct, Ranger Amy. And Paul, you're now $1 million richer.
Oh
All
my
right.
goodness, I'm a millionaire. I knew this podcast was going to pay off.
You are correct. Ichthyology, again, don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
That's
is
fish.
study of fish. Ophiology is the study of
Ophiology.
snakes, and batrachology is the study of amphibians.
Very good, very good.
All
That was
right.
a good little stumper for today.
Yeah, it was a good stumper. And you got your wish. Now you're on this episode about snakes. Ranger
It
Amy
was-
loves snakes.
I do like snakes. Thank you for the opportunity to make Paul $1 billion richer. So I'll take
It was
half of
only
that.
a million. It was only a million.
It's only a
Okay,
million.
I'll take half of that.
What are we supposed to do with $1 million?
And then I'll make a herpetological sanctuary in the backyard, which is what that would be fun, huh?
Yes. Dan, I understand that this is a double stumper today, though.
Yes, so let's do part two. What do they call that? The
nightcap.
The nightcap. So our nightcap studio Simon Stumper tonight
Oh,
asks, which of these other ophiologically themed identities was most recently used for a minor league team? Was it A, the Tucson Sidewinders, B, the Kissimmee Cobras, or C, the Calgary Vipers?
ooh,
Do you recognize all three of those names?
I do. The Calgary Vipers are the least familiar to me.
Because the first two were affiliated teams. The Calgary Vipers was an independent.
Yeah. So I'm just because I'm less familiar with those. I'm trying to determine between the Sidewinders and the Cobras. I feel like they were both like sort of late 90s, early 2000s. I'm gonna go the Sidewinders.
You are close,
Oh.
but the correct answer is the Calgary Vipers. Okay, so
I just didn't know anything about the Vipers. I had to discount them because I didn't know anything about them.
I'll tell you something about them right now, but I'll start with the Kissimmee Cobras. They were a Florida State League team from 1995 to 2000, so they're the longest ago. That team ceased operations, although baseball later returned to Kissimmee in 2017 with what team?
The Kissimmee I'm Irishes.
The Kissimmee You Fools. No, it was the Florida Fire Frog. So,
They're in Kissimmee. That's right. That's right.
and I don't know if it's Kissimmee or Kissimmee. I think it's Kissimmee, but don't know. So somebody, if there are any Kissimmee, whatever listeners out there, please enlighten us.
The Kissimmee phones.
The Tucson Sidewinders played in the Pacific Coast League from 1998 to 2008.
Yeah.
So that's close, you'll see. But what are the Tucson Sidewinders today?
See, we've talked about this a number of times. Are they the Reno Aces now?
Yes, they're the Reno Aces.
Yeah.
So the Calgary Vipers, they went from league to league. They started as a Northern League team. All these leagues are independent. From 2005 to 2007, they were then in the Golden Baseball League from 2008 through 2010. And finally, they were in the North American League, the very short-lived North American League, for but one season in 2011. So that was the most recent one.
Calgary Vipers. Now I know. Calgary, I bet you they have a cool brand. Dan and Amy, thank you both. This has been a something of a wild stumper. And we'll see you.
Life.
Dan, we'll see you next week. Ranger Amy, we'll see you on a forthcoming episode.
Bye,
Bye,
Dan. Have a
Ranger
great
Amy.
day.
See you next
Bye.
week, Paul.